Welcome to my channel. Please hit like, share, and subscribe. In this video, we'll be touching on the life and times of Reverend C.L. Franklin. Reverend C.L. Franklin was born Clarence LaVon Walker on January 22, 1915, near Indianola, Mississippi, to sharecroppers Rachel and Willie Walker. Willie abandoned the family when Clarence was 4 years old, and when Rachel married Henry Franklin, the family adopted the Franklin surname. C.L. grew up listening to blues records by Blind Lemon Jefferson and Roosevelt Sykes, but also to recorded sermons by the Reverend J.M. Gates. Inspired to preach after admiring the eloquence of Baptist minister Reverend Benjamin J. Perkins, Franklin accepted the call to ministry and was ordained around age 17. He preached for several churches in Mississippi until settling into a pastorate at New Salem Baptist Church in Memphis, where he remained until 1944. While in Memphis, Franklin furthered his studies at Lemoyne College. From 1944 to 1946, he led Friendship Baptist Church in Buffalo, New York, and in June 1946 was installed as pastor of New Bethel Baptist Church in Detroit, Michigan. Frank, as everyone, parishioners included, called him, was a master of the folk preaching style known as whooping, whose roots lie deep in the black oral traditions of the antebellum South. An embarrassment to many churchgoers today who consider it a carryover from the bad old days, whooping has nonetheless survived into the 21st century. The whooped sermon is, in every respect, a performance. Starting from a spoken text, it gathers intensity, rising finally to a hoarse, rhythmic chant that stays in one musical key, punctuated by groans, emphysemic-sounding gasps, and buzzsaw screams. The preacher working to gather the crowd into a frenzy, a few inevitably falling out, attended to by ushers and even nurses to leave the members exhausted, cleansed, and ready to face another damn week in the white man's world. In 1953, anxious to be heard beyond New Bethel's walls, C.L. arranged for Detroit's leading black radio station to broadcast his sermons. The show was a hit. The people seemed as if they wanted to come out of the ground, said the headliner. Crowds gathered outside New Bethel, and the police had to reroute traffic. Thinking still bigger, C.L. bought time on a Memphis station whose signal spanned the Mid-South, and finally on Nashville's 50,000-watt WLAC, which reached across the continent at night. Serving time in a juvenile detention center in Toccoa, Georgia, a teenaged James Brown listened avidly, as did a three-sport high school athlete in Greenville, South Carolina, named Jesse Jackson. Eager to cash in on his radio audience, C.L. started recording his sermons for Chess, America's top blues and R&B label, home to Muddy Waters, Howlin' Wolf, Sonny Boy Williamson, and Chuck Berry, releasing over 70 albums, more than one of them million sellers. C.L. had always liked blues. There were some people, church people, who didn't understand that blues were part of their cultural heritage, he said. Indeed, his shouting, sermonizing, showed how porous was the line between preacher and blues singer, man of God, and the devil's right hand. When the R&B star Bobby Blue Bland lost his scream, he studied C.L.'s celebrated sermon, The Eagle Stirred Her Nest, coming up with his trademark squall, a distinctive, some say, revolting snort, modeling a rhythm and blues vocal technique on Reverend's sermonizing. C.L. was a fine singer himself, but Barbara Siggers Franklin outsang her husband, said a family friend who knew one or two things about gospel music. To Mahalia Jackson, Barbara Franklin was one of the really great gospel singers. Barbara never recorded, evidently content to stay in CL's shadow and raise his children. The man with the $1,000,000 voice had another nickname, the Jitterbug Preacher. CL never said no to a walk on the wild side. From his alligator shoes to his brillianted conch, he was a slick player, sober-sided pastor, and midnight mover, a hard-drinking, pot-smoking, serial seducer. It may well have been CL's womanizing that finally caused Barbara to move across Lake Erie to Buffalo and leave her family after a dozen years. The urge for going must have been strong indeed. Barbara was by all accounts a devoted mother. The children, of course, experienced it as abandonment. Irma was 10, Carolyn 4, Aretha Louise was 6. I'll tell you what kind of child Aretha was. She was a traumatized child, a family friend said. For all her father's gaping flaws, Aretha Franklin could not have asked for a brighter musical beacon. She inherited his divided soul, too, the tug between the Lord and Dr. Feelgood. She's got her father's feeling and passion, said no less an authority than Ray Charles. When T.L. Franklin, one of the last great preachers, delivers a sermon, he builds his case so beautifully you can't help but see the light. Same when Aretha sings. When someone asked C.L. if he'd ever sat down with the girl and taught her, he said no, but she heard me. Born in Shelby, Mississippi, Barbara married Clarence LaVon Franklin in 1936. The couple had 4 children, as said earlier, Irma, Cecil, Aretha, and Carolyn. Before their marriage, Barbara already had a son, Vaughn, from a previous relationship, whom C.L. Franklin adopted. The pair had trouble in the relationship due to C.L.'s various infidelities, including fathering a daughter named Carol Ellen Kelly by Mildred Jennings, a 12-year-old congregant in Memphis in 1940. Barbara started a career by working in a music store and by giving private music lessons. She was also training to be a nurse's aide. Although it was widely reported for years, it has been stated that Barbara Franklin did not abandon her children. Aretha Franklin herself disputed this rumor, and Professor Nick Salvatore of Cornell University discredited it in his biography of C.L. Franklin. According to Salvatore, Barbara Franklin regularly visited Detroit to see her children, and they traveled to Buffalo for summer holidays to stay with her. Tragically, Barbara Franklin died of a heart attack on March 7, 1952. She was just 34 years old. Now, the rumors that have circulated regarding Aretha Franklin's father and his mom is that she got tired of his infidelities and she left him, but she couldn't take all of the children with her because she couldn't afford it. But when she got herself together, she came back to get the children, and he didn't want to give the children back to her, so they were battling over the children. Pardon me. And all of a sudden, it says here in this article that I found that she died of a heart attack. But there's other stories that circulate that says she got hit by a car while she was crossing the street on her way to pick up the children. So it's really hard to distinguish what's the truth and what's false. But I'm going to put everything out here that I found. It is said that Reverend C.L. Franklin's church was holy by day and trifling by night. Ray Charles was quoted as saying it was the freakiest atmosphere he had ever been around. The Reverend also had a fetish for young girls, and is said to have impregnated his daughter, R&B soul singer Aretha Franklin, at the age of 12, along with the young girl in his church, who was the same age as Aretha at the same time. Aretha gave birth at 13 and gave the boy child to her grandmother to raise. This was kept secret until recent years, allegedly. Rumors have always circulated that it was more to Reverend C.L. Franklin's death also. One allegation stated that it was a hit made to look like a robbery. Shortly after midnight on Sunday, June 10, 1979, C.L. Franklin was shot twice at point-blank range during what was said to be an attempted robbery at his home on Detroit's west side. He was taken to Henry Ford Hospital on nearby West Grand Boulevard. He remained in a coma for the next 5 years. The Franklin children moved him back to the house 6 months after the tragedy and installed a 24-hour nurse at the residence to monitor the minister. He remained at the home until the middle of 1984. He died on July 27, 1984, just 1 week after being placed in Detroit's New Light nursing home. Franklin was 69 years old. Rest in peace to Reverend C.L. Franklin, and rest in peace to Aretha Franklin and her mother. But there was always rumors about her oldest child being fathered by her own father. It was never proven. It was said that the father was a young guy that Aretha was seeing at the time. But, I'm just putting everything out there for y'all to see. And all of this information is alleged and for entertainment purposes only. But you see, every story that I have, there's some type of tragedy, and it seems like no one was exempt from having some sort of problem at home or something like that. But that's the end of this story about Reverend C.L. Franklin. Peace and love. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button. Thanks. Bye.